Thank you, Dr. Leena, for joining me today. We are very grateful to you for taking time out from your busy schedule and sharing your expertise with us. So Cisco parents are very grateful you are taking time to educate us on mindful parenting. As part of that series, many parents have sent me questions, and I am going to ask some questions on their behalf. So my first question is, one parent is saying, she's challenged with teenagers find balance with political changes. There is so much going on, and knowing what level to engage with them for apathy to awareness to activism. So, any insights from you?
Well, it is a very valid question, first of all. And thank you for having me again to answer some of these questions. We all are definitely experiencing some stress and anxiety around the political change, the climate change. There's a lot going on in our external worlds that have been challenging, that has been challenging. Um, what I would say is that kind of going back to the kind of the basics of what we kind of need to remind ourselves is the stance of like active listening is the first thing, right? So um, within the family, there may be people with different political views, and they may not necessarily agree with the other person or have a different perspective. But kind of the mindful parenting concept that we've been kind of reviewing, it really reminds us to go to ground zero and remember that we are all, respect deserving human beings. And each one of us may have our own ideas or attitude or views about certain thing. So certainly active listening would be the first step. The second step is, whether or not you always agree, it's important to, validate what the other person is saying or feeling. And you can make comments like, if you agree, like, I agree, I'm feeling the same way as you're feeling right now. Or you may, if you disagree, you may say, I don't quite agree with your views, and it's okay we can agree to disagree. Uh, so really starting with a more calm foundation of, conversation where you're listening, you're validating, and then there might be things that, you can help with, what we call as like problem solving, right? Where, okay, so this is if this is how you're feeling, then I'm hearing background noise. Maybe you, yeah, okay. If this is the this is kind of what we are all feeling, then um, how do we kind of cope with this? And you may bring in perspective taking, as an adult, you have a larger perspective taking, which we just build because of being adults, seeing life and experiences of life. And so not necessarily saying this is what you should do. I think more taking a stance that these are some of the things that I have found helpful. If you are finding certain things to be helpful, whether it is like minimize the social media input about the news around you, or talk about it with your peer group and have some kind of healthy conversation around it to feel supported. Or if it's you know like feeling like, yeah, we don't have much control over this, and kind of focus on what I can control, what I can work on in terms of building my resilience at this point. So those might be some strategies to talk about.
Thank you, Dr. Leena. So, the next question is, what are the best strategy for parenting young adults, age ranging between 18 and 21, who are legally adults but still developing independence and financial stability?
I would say some of the things I mentioned in the first question can also apply. The general fundamental rule of thumb, especially with mindful parenting lenses, you are, treating them as equal as treating them with love and respect as human beings. They may not be yet financially independent, or they may not be quite doing what you think is right for them. But, you know, not bringing that kind of measure of, I guess, well-being and success. I think there is a lot there. Like you are rightly worried about your child being not quite independent or not quite meeting the milestones that they need to at maybe that age. So keeping those things aside and still valuing them and respecting them for who they are and working with them. I think once you have that foundation of a good relationship where you're understanding what they are going through, what challenges they may have, you can then collaborate to problem solve and come up with solutions or ideas to work through the challenge they may be having. Another thing is, this is hard as a parent to do, especially, we are so used to providing that hand holding all along until they become adults. So you are really used to, doing stuff for them maybe at times or suggesting them, and they would listen to you and they would agree with you and they would follow through. And all of that has now shifted because now they are an individual person themselves and they have their views, their perspectives, um, what's going around them with peers. Like they're hugely influenced by the world around them and forming their own views and opinions, which may not necessarily gel well with you. There is that big generation gap as we talk about. uh, but at the same time, reminding yourself that it's their journey. It's very hard to step back and feel like, you can't do much more, especially when they're back. Maybe they're back from college and they're, struggling to launch again with a job or something, or they are still finding their path. You may feel like you may have ideas and ways that you would go about doing this, but they are not buying into that. And it's very, very difficult, like to bite your tongue and sit back and say, okay, I'm not going to keep bringing this up, because if they are not receptive, they're not receptive, and that's a hard pill to swallow, but you need to do that and let them figure their journey out, because they are adults and they may stumble, they may fall, they may learn from the experience and come back full circle a year or two later saying, oh, what you were saying was the thing I should have listened to or followed at that time. And often that happens, but you need to let that happen.
Thank you, Dr. Leena. Related question. I think parents, they have desire to remain informed and maintain connection, but they are not able to do because now kids are in the college, they're not under the same roof. So any guidance for those parents, how to keep that communication channel open and maintain that connection?
Yeah, I would say that, some of this is really dependent on your foundation of relationship with the child to begin with. So if you've had a good, relationship during their elementary, middle, high school years, then it's much easier to keep that communication channel open. However, it's never too late. I would never say that it's never going to change. I think there are still ways to repair the rupture if there has been some conflict or some, high school years, teenage years can be challenging, and a lot of the times um, we see that those are the years when maybe there is some disruption in the relationship or some resentment or whatnot, and so really, if you haven't worked on that, this is still your time to work on it. Acknowledging that maybe you could have handled it differently, helping them understand that maybe they could have handled things differently. So definitely kind of creating that space of mutual respect. If it's time for us to come together and apologize to each other, it is never too late. You can do that yourself amongst as a family. If you have a trusted family member who can mitigate that, that's fine. Or a trusted friend, family friend, or somebody the child feels comfortable also mitigating. But if not, you can get some professional help and work with a family counselor or therapist who can do a couple sessions and clear the air for you. So that can be done. And then you know also like showing that you care and are thinking about them. So of course we all get busy in our day-to-day lives. We have our own agenda, our things to kind of take care of. But even a quick text message to say, I'm thinking about you, I made your favorite thing today and I wish you were here, but when you come home for your break, I'll be sure to make it, if it's a mom doing that. If it's a dad, like if we are watching a show or something that reminds of you, doesn't need to be that something is reminding you of them. But whenever that happens, acknowledging and sending a quick message, even doing quick check-ins like, good morning, I hope you made to your class, how's your day going? So if you're showing that you are thinking about them, you care about them, that they matter to you even though they are away, I think that can really melt the person and help them equally reciprocate.
Thank you, Leena. And the next question is how to find strengths of a child who has high work ethics and spends a lot of time and effort, but forgets a lot of strategies that are needed in academic success.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the world of young adults and teens, right? We all, I'm sure, as parents, can recognize this challenge with our kids. There's scientific reality behind that. Their executive function is not quite there yet. Our brains grow until age 25. So a lot of that neuronal pruning and the networking and the circuitry kind of getting refined happens, in fact, more in the college years. And so often you have to let that happen. And of course, if things are really at stake and you're feeling like, oh, they are not passing their classes because they haven't been turning their assignments in, or there's some real red flags, then I would definitely, look into even like evaluating them for certain conditions like ADHD, which often has a big component of executive function dysfunction. There can be sometimes learning differences, like a lot of bright kids and smart kids can keep going on and do well in high school years, but when college life comes or even in workforce, sometimes I see a lot of parents come back and tell me, I'm struggling to be organized and be really on top of things. And they may have an underlying neurodevelopmental condition called ADHD, or sometimes even subtle executive function challenges like processing speed disorders or learning differences, sometimes even. So if there are red flags that seem to be affecting the child's, performance in future, definitely taking a step forward to evaluating and figuring out what else is going on. And then, you know, often as parents, we feel tempted to like tell them what works for our day to day and our organizational skills. But, I would say there are also professionals who do this better than you doing it and trying to interfere with the young adult who's trying to be independent and figure life on their own. So there are executive function coaches or organizational tutors that do this for a living, and even plugging them in. A lot of colleges offer resources within their systems, so even exploring that and maybe having them work with somebody like that for a couple sessions to kind of get their bearing. And usually, um, it's better received if it's coming from a third party than parents, is what my experience is, especially once they become teenagers. So even though you may have strategies and you may have tools, you can suggest them. And if they're not using them, don't take it as a sign of like they're disrespecting you and they're not listening to you. It might be just that they don't want to do what you are saying, which is very typical for this age group, and looking outside for other help and resources would be a good idea.
Thank you, Dr. Leena. The next question is how to handle a 22-year-old who chose a profession she likes, but not taking it seriously, not eager to do masters, no discipline, no commitment to work.
Yeah, kind
Looks
of
like
falls in the
parenting is
same
worried.
category of question, right? It's a little bit, different in a sense that maybe now this young adult is in a little further stage of life. So yeah, it's a journey to explore. I know like a lot of us feel like we succumbed to the careers we chose and found ways to find joy in that. Maybe if it was not there to begin with, or we kept going with that, thinking this is the way to survive right now. A lot of our kids come, with more privileges, and they are growing in a very different world. So they may not have that sense of urgency or sense of like that pressure to be independent right away or do the very best or succeed right away. And they may need to explore and figure out what they really want to do. And so maybe that's could be one reason to think about. And that's kind of the beauty of mindfulness, right? Like when I practice mindfulness and I take a step back and see what could be going on with my child here, rather than assuming just one option that they are just not listening to me, or they are too stubborn, or they are, being disrespectful right now. Kind of trying to put yourself in their shoes, having that empathy and understanding of what's going on for them, what's important to them, what's going on for them as a generation, what's going on in the world around them, that's kind of shaping their kind of reality or the day-to-day choices. There's a lot that I think could explain to you why these kids maybe are a little bit lost. I see a few young adults in my practice who've gone through similar challenges, and my general like experience has been that they all figure things out eventually, and it all works out. But um, it could be also this whole phenomenon of like you're expected to, especially for like some technology careers where you can, you know, get into college, graduate right off of undergrad, you can kind of find a job, and so there is so much of focus in the high school years. It's like get to the good college, just get this like almost like this is like the only mirage of your life, and once you accomplish that, you are golden. And so a lot of the times teens are just going in that herd mentality and in that group of like just what's the culture around them. And I can speak more for the Bay Area culture, where they feel like this is it, like if I just study hard and get to a good college and then come out from that college with a degree, my life is set. And so sometimes they are like so focused and they get there and they get things too soon too fast, and then when they get that so soon too fast, and then they're like already getting jobs at some of these technology giant companies like Facebook, Amazon, or Cisco, or all these big kind of companies that are here in the Silicon Valley. They feel like, okay, so I've achieved everything that I had goals for in the last 5 6 years, and so now what next? And sometimes it's like, when you get these things too fast, you are not sure if you're really content with those. Or sometimes it could be like, this is what I thought I liked many years ago, but kind of coming into the workforce doesn't really make me feel as fulfilled, or doesn't feel like this is what I see myself doing long term. And so maybe they are lost or confused, and it's okay. It's okay for them to be a little bit lost and confused, to figure out what the right next step is. And then again, last thing I would say is, like, if you're seeing a pattern and if you're concerned about their overall behavior, it's certainly important to not miss things like anxiety or depression, those types of mental health issues that we all experience at some point of our lives. to see if that's what's driving some of this lack of motivation or withdrawal from what they're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Leena. When we are talking about teens, what strategies would you suggest to make a teenager aware of responsibilities, learn from mistakes, and take more responsibilities?
So I think that there's a little bit of an answer in the question already. So you let them fail, you let them make mistakes, and then learn from it. That's really what it is. Um, I would say that as our parenting has evolved with the way the world has evolved, I see that we have all become very overprotective parents. And that's been a big shift. That's also, I think, is considered to be one factor of why our kids are so anxious these days, because we have worked hard to achieve our successes, and then we decided to give them everything that we were deprived of in our childhood. And so we are like going above and beyond to not only make them comfortable in terms of luxury and privileges, but we are also very like, oh, they should not feel sad, they should not feel bad. Like, we are always there to cheer them up. And sometimes the working parents feel guilty about not spending enough time, so they are always there to compensate for the time they can't spend by getting them things that make them happy momentarily. And so I think, and there's this whole culture about like we want to encourage kids to participate. Even though they're participating in the sport, they get a participation trophy. I mean, again, that is not completely wrong, but the shift has been like very, very like, oh, protecting them from feeling any disappointment, feeling any rejection, feeling any failure. And and if we can start shifting that a little bit, of course, we need to nurture them with love and care and with wisdom. But the wisdom is basically what we are learning is that we need to have a balance there. If we don't allow them to feel disappointments or failures, it's going to be hard for them later on in life when they first experience that. And so if we can have them go through that earlier on, then maybe we can prevent them from getting to that point of making more mistakes and learning from that. Maybe they would have learned a little bit already. Or we are allowing them to do that, and it's okay if that's the way they are choosing to learn, because you may have a formula that works for you, but they have to kind of buy in on to that formula, and sometimes they listen right away, sometimes they need to go through the experience to learn that that is the secret or the formula that might work for them as well.
Thank you, Dr. Leena. So, at what age shall we give mobile phones? 14 or 15, or only after high school?
So I would say, unfortunately, there is no clear guideline about this. There is no, if you ask the technology giants about like what age they gave their kids their cell phone, they say we never gave them until in high school because they know how detrimental it can be. However, that being said, I think the decision is very individual, a very personal decision that goes from family to family. It depends on a few factors. It depends on what's the reason for giving them the smartphone, whether they really need a smartphone or just a mode of communication. If you're feeling that they need to be in touch because of safety concerns, or if there is a pickup drop off that's happening, you need to be communicating with them. So it depends on that. Sometimes that you feel like, oh, a middle schooler might need the phone because we need that as a communication tool. And within that, then you make a choice whether you're giving them a proper smartphone with all the privileges, or you're just using one phone feature. And there are some other tools in the market too, without having to get a phone to have that communication with your child. Um, it also depends on how mature your child is, how much you feel like you can trust them, in a sense that how maturity looks like for them, how maybe impulsive and and kind of innocent maybe they are. Every kid is different, their temperament is different, their personalities are different. So it also depends on how much you feel like giving such a dangerous tool. I think in one of the talks I was talking about, we think about, just like we put so much thought about giving the child a car before they start driving, and we have so many rules and so many things in place and regulations to follow. Similarly, we have to have that also with the cell phone, because it can take you into a dangerous world also. So really looking at those components, what your value system is as a family, what's important, if you're giving them access, what access would look like. Are you going to have some, contract that you're giving along with the privilege of giving them a device? So there is device contract that can be a great start to, like, and then you need to come back to it and talk about it. It's not like once they sign, they are going to be 100% on board. So it's a act of constant, like, revisiting, monitoring, negotiating, and working through that. So I hope this answers that question. I can give a big talk about this by itself.
No, we truly appreciate Dr. Leena, you taking time and answering all the questions. I'm sure there are more questions in parents' head when they're listening to your talk. So we'll meet again with more questions. Until then, thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you again for this opportunity.